Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arvind Pandey. I would be your moderator for this session. The topic of the session is 5G is a game changer. I think the time wise it is very relevant topic, and we have all the panelists who would be really putting their views. And I would like to introduce you all the five panelists. I have Dr. Magnus Everbrink, Chief Technology Officer APAC from Ericsson. Then, as I see Mr. Gopi Chand, he is a very senior colleague, worked in Tata Sons, has got a very technology perspective as he will be able to bring across. Then I see he is the head of enterprise, basically help us to get to the end. We would have Dr. Kamakoti. He is head of department of computer science, recipient of Abdul Kalam Award.
I think we're having an audio problem.
And he has got
Paresh, you might want to.
Paresh who will be supporting for this entire field. So one of us will do. So that
So Paresh, you might want to take over.
Essentially would help.
So Arvind, you're breaking up completely. I don't think people can hear.
Hello.
Yeah, you're seeming okay, but there seems to be internet issues. So you start off. If there is anything, then I'll follow.
Yeah. So are you guys able to hear me properly?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Yes.
Now we can hear, but we lost you for most half of the
introduction. Probably in the first session, yeah, Arvind, start over.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll go to audio. I think that's a so basically I think we had this one round of discussion introduction. So thank you very much for all of you to join. Dr. Magnus, Gopi, Vinish, Dr. Kamakoti, and AGK. Thanks, Paresh, for help supporting us as well. What I will do is I will start with the questions session and pick the brains of the experts and the panelists as we go on. So, Dr. Magnus, thank you for joining. I wanted to know from your view, what is the 5G is disruptive technology? If yes, then what will be the basically potential cases which eventually will offer a unique wireless connectivity in solutions like data analytics or in any innovation that would lead to optimization and cost saving? And how importantly it will be to do a digital transformation, which is being talked about, and with the industry 4.0 coming in, how the value chain will help to telcos, OTT, CDNs, and entrepreneurs to see what the revenue proposition could be. So, Dr. Magnus, from your views?
Thank you, Arvind. Pleasure to be here. Well, 5G, is it disruptive or not? Well, I argue it's not. It's an evolutionary step building upon the mobile networks that are already there, and then in particular on 4G, of course. The way we provide it from Ericsson's point of view, we make sure that operators can launch it at a low entry barrier. As an example, radio hardware that's been delivered since 2015 can, through a software upgrade, be used also on 5G instantaneously in a millisecond basis, deciding whether it transmit on 4G or 5G. Thereby, coverage can be done much quicker. Also, of course, for the new frequency bands, new gear is needed, but that's an inherent step. So in that sense, it will leverage very much upon what 4G is already there, and it will interact. If you fall out of coverage, will fall back to 4G. So 4G will be important to be the base for 5G as it is being built out. On the application side, it's phenomenal potential, I'd say. For the consumer base, we see already in, for instance, Korea, the users are using the system considerably more. Why? It's faster, it's snappier, it's more responsive. Content, immersive content is very much appreciated. AR, VR applications are being tried out. We see on an average basis, the consumers are using about 2.6 times more data than what they did in 4G, thanks to having a better delivery of the service. But perhaps the most interesting part is in the industry segment and enterprise. We believe in Ericsson that's an enormous potential. Already we're using 5G in our own factories in part, as well as 4G. By being data driven, by having more data points, more connectivity in our manufacturing, we can enhance value, improve the product quality, and also improve safety and flow in the factory. We made a study together with Arthur D. Little. We say that for 10 different segments by 2030, on a world basis, $700 billion in additional revenue can be generated for mobile operators. That's on a world basis. The corresponding number here in India is $17 billion. The world number is about 35% uptake additional revenue. So great potential to lead digitalization now, as you can cut the wire and go wirelessly into the enterprises. Just as a small remark, from one company I learned, they typically in factories say that a normal factory has about 800 kilometers of wires. Obviously, a lot of effort to install it. Obviously, a bit of a nightmare when you need to find the fault, when you have to either repair a wire or to rewire it because your factory is changing layout, which happens often in modern manufacturing. So fantastic potential with 5G for consumers, for enterprises, become data-driven and digitalize the way you're working. Improve safety, improve efficiency, lots of value to grab for all parties being enjoyed in the flow, I would argue. So, Arvind, to you.
Thanks, Dr. Magnus. I think it's a great perspective, and you already set that tone that basically it is the use cases which are prevailing to make sure that it sees the way. So on the same breath, I think I would request AGK to give your view and see what the use cases will be, whether it will be coming as a closer to the people who would be get encouraged for the application will be will not really.
Sorry, Arvind, we can't hear you. Your audio is very choppy.
We'll be keen to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't hear the back end of your questions, but let me try to address it.
Can I repeat that?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Arvind. So let me just address it, right? I think we had trouble getting the introduction going also. So AGK, I'm based in the Valley here. Our company is a software company, and we are always looking at computationally intensive algorithms for variety applications, most for media and AI analytics, and similarly autonomous vehicle and all that. So if you really take a look at as Magnus pointed out, even though the 5G as a technology from a hardware infrastructure and radio and all standpoint, it's evolutionary, but the application when it comes to what is possible, it can disrupt a lot of things. For example, we are one of the world's best provider of video encoding technology. As we all know, video is 70-80%, depending on who you talk to, consumes the bandwidth in the internet. And especially in countries like India, where we don't have in the last mile high bandwidth connectivity, we had to make very sophisticated encoding algorithm to make sure that the user has a very good experience in the last mile. So that we had to make what we call low bitrate optimizations in our encoder. So many OTT providers that are providing content in India, encoded with that feature. But with 5G, if everybody can get that, then what happens is the user's video viewing experience becomes significantly much better, right? I mean, it would be certainly, with multiple units at home, people will be able to get different type of content as well as stream to their respective devices very, very well if we can do that. The other thing, of course, is, we talked about, I view, a lot of AI or edge analytics is going to happen. The fact that we were able to have very good connectivity between the devices to the, you don't need to go all the way to the cloud to get certain compute done. There could be a lot of things that can be done between the device and the local side. So a lot of edge analytics use cases I can see coming up. This could be in retail, it could be in sports analytics. A lot of different possibilities are there. So I think, Magnus already talked about AR, VR use cases. That also opens up a plethora of use cases. Then the other thing, of course, is telemedicine. I see that possibility. And then, of course, even, gaming, shared gaming, and, multiplayer gaming and all that.
So it looks like it opens really a big segment, like we all think about that gaming, analytics, the farming, and a lot many stuff which probably will drive the business case. And it looks to me, AGK, that 5G does have a lot of good business case in terms of taking it to the next step. So thank you very much, and I will dwell upon that. Would be keen to hear some views from Vinish, given the fact that the enterprise will, of course, play a key role and see what use cases, building on the AGK's point of view. Vinish, what do you think the enterprise will play a role, and what will be the business perspective which essentially will drive 5G?
Sure. Thanks, Arvind. And yeah, it was a bit patchy when you were introducing, so let me also introduce myself. My name is Vinish Bava. I take care of the enterprise and all new emerging business for Nokia Networks in India. And Nokia has been sort of a leading player in the telecom space, so not a new name for most of the people here. So 5G, it's interesting. Whenever we meet our customers, or in general, when we talk about 5G, we always get this question of, we already have 4G, so why do you need 5G? Everything is, running fine, and there is enough data speeds, and why is this? What is the need of 5G? And if we rewind 4 or 5 years ago, similar kind of questions used to come when we were moving from 3G to 4G, right? That what is the need of 4G? Everything is working with 3G. So the fact of the matter is, I think the demand creates on its own. When the supply is there, the demand will automatically get created, and that's what we are seeing with 5G happening. South Korea, one of the first countries which launched 5G, and Magnus did allude to it, is already a front runner in using 5G, and statistically there is 25 to 30% more data consumption over there, right? So we don't see any reason why that will not happen in any of the other countries, including India. That existing 4G data, when 5G comes, just pure consumer data consumption will go high. Whatever they might be using, and various applications are there. So that point is for a given in wherever commercially 5G has been launched, number one. Number two, on 5G use cases is not only about consumers. I think consumers is the smallest in terms of the usage in 5G, where it's anyways going to increase. But look at the industries, the businesses, the machine to machine. We are going, billions of devices talking to each other. So 5G use cases are pretty much all around industries, around machines, around connectivity of different factories, different, transportation, logistics. All these industries are going to adapt 5G and have the machines talk to each other. So there is this billions of devices all going to use 5G. That's where the enterprise play begins in. That's the real use cases. Wherever the demos are happening and we are trialing and talking to different companies, whether it be mining, logistics, transportation, hospitals, all of them are talking about, the need for 5G because 2-3 things. One is security, reliability, low latency. all this is offered by 5G, much better, leaps better than 4G right now. And those are pretty much the use cases that are needed by all these industries that I mentioned, and many more, right? So that's where the real need will converge of 5G. And on top of it, now the fact of the matter is that the apps and the whole ecosystem is needed. What will you do with once you have the connectivity? So that's where the whole the need of entrepreneurs coming up with new ideas around various apps that are needed for using 5G will be there. And I'll give you a couple of examples. We were in a forum where somebody from Singapore spoke about virtual tourism, 5G using virtual tourism. So they are creating, and that's a prototype of an app that they are creating, that you can actually get a feeling that you are inside a resort and maybe in somewhere in India, and you can move around and sort of get the experience virtually, and then before you make the booking and before you go there. So that's just one example that remotely using 5G, though it's currently working on 4G, but it's still a lot of thing has to improve, because 5G will obviously give it better visibility and everything. So those kind of use cases are there in a field like virtual tourism, never thought about earlier, right? Similarly, robotic surgery, low latency is the most critical factor which is needed for something like a remote surgery, because you can't afford even less than a millisecond, even a little bit more than that when you're doing remote surgery. So those kind of use cases will be there in 5G and many more. So that ecosystem has to be developed, and that's where the audience, that who's here around entrepreneurs and those ideas have to come up. Whether they'll come up tomorrow or day after, I don't know, but that's the need once the underlying 5G will be there. So Arvind, that's the summary right now in terms of the need from consumer to industries and the need for the ecosystem around apps that will be needed for 5G.
So it sounds like 5G is seemingly coming to as a disruptive technology, because A, it is opening a new niche market, B, it is opening a very great experience, and C, it is also opening a different requirement from network perspective, as you said, on the latency and stuff like that. And of course, lastly, it will open with the app to see what entrepreneur can work on, and multiple opportunity can be done. So that sounds very interesting session. And with the same view, moving to Dr. Kamakoti to see what would be essentially what would be the different in India for a coverage model, and what will be the deployment scenario which will start with. So, for example, how this will getting started in India, and what would be the benefit, like when he said, in terms of enterprise. What's your view, and what different from a technology point of view it will help to the end consumer or enterprise, as we all talked about?
Thank you, Arvind. The most important thing is that when we start looking at disruptive technology, the industry has to be ready to adopt this technology. So there is the communication industry, the telcos who will provide you this 5G, who's going to take it, right? So that industry readiness has to come, and we have to work for it. So I was also suggesting in yesterday's conversation with Arvind that I should organize a event where the industries who have pain points in actually doing that and should come out with those pain points, so that the communication industry understands, the electronic industry understands where is the automation there and where 5G will be. So tomorrow when a telco actually starts providing 5G, there should be takers, and that takers should be in good volume, so that the economy for the person also improves. So one thing that we need to be extremely careful is that we need to bring up the industry to understand the need for 5G, and they should have live case studies before a mass launch is going to happen. And that is something very, very crucial. Right? I also have similar observations about AI, right? The AI, we have been saying so much hype. So what disruption has it brought into the banking industry, for example? So we are yet to see some great disruptions coming because of thing. And suppose the spectrum is leased and there is no takers or there are no important use cases, I think that's not going to be useful for any country. And that is one, bringing up the industry relations is the first point that I want to get here. The second thing is that this 5G, as all the speakers before me have told, is actually going to become much closer to mankind. It is going to do much more than, it's not 4G plus, it's not, high definition TV entertainment, right? It's much more than this. And so there is a need to bring in mechanisms to build trustworthy networks. And these trustworthiness have to be even proven sometimes maybe in a court of law. For example, even an autonomous vehicle, right? And what would be the insurance policy for this autonomous vehicle? There's some problem happens. Is it because of the network or the hardware? Who is going to take the responsibility for this, right? If it involves in an accident. So there will be use cases. The SLAs have to become much more stronger, and then there could be a lot more of litigations that could come, because this is a complex system in which 5G is also one component. So we have to look at availability of source code. 5G is now becoming, unlike 4G, there's more software than hardware. A lot more software is coming up. We should look at both at the RAN and core side. We need to look at availability of the source code for audit at some time. And those things become very important. There is going to be a lot more of legal perspective and technical, techno-legal aspects, and that is extremely important. The last one is that for India, we have certain needs, and we have gone ahead and made the LMNC, the low mobility large coverage specific standard. It got approved in ITU, and I think that is these type of standards have to come up so that it satisfies many of our needs, specifically for rural India. So we are looking at 5G as an economy changer, not just as an entertainment plus. And these are some things which are very crucial. I think these three are the most important things that we need to look forward.
Well, that's really great that you are bringing a new perspective, which is what the second round I wanted to put across. That what are the challenges, and of course, one of course is all those stuff which is required for enterprise. But a new dimension you added is that how this will work on a rural, which is a need of the hour for India, for mobile broadband, while we had for the voice side. So that's a very interesting topic, and I think we will definitely have some development as we see that from that point of view. Now, quickly moving on to pick up your brain, Gopi, having worked in a major corporate in a technology role, what is that you think from a 5G disruption and use cases point of view? Is that going to be a little different, or is that something which have your same views what other panelists have talked about?
Thanks, Arvind. I do think 5G is disruptive. The technology always is a continuum. So it is not pulled out of thin air. So on that, I can agree with Magnus. However, if you look at how do you define disruption, some deliverable or functional aspect is increased at least 4x is how it used to be defined as disruptive. We are talking about 100x increase in traffic being enabled by 5G. So if that is not disruptive, then we will be hard pressed to find anything disruptive. So in that sense, I want to emphasize that 5G is going to make us think differently. And of course, 10x decrease in latency, again, that's going to make us think differently, as Vinesh said. So if I have to have automotive to automotive communication to avoid an accident, for example, then I can't have latency, nor can I go to the cloud. So these are things which are going to be made possible and increasingly made possible by technology like 5G. Of course, if you think about it, 5G from a technology standpoint is orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. FDM we have done for ages, and all of us know what it is. And so adding an orthogonal to it might sound innocuous, but really if you look at it from a standpoint of what it brings to the table, that's where I would call it disruptive, definitely, without any doubt. So from a standpoint of applications, we are today, my company is in media and entertainment. The deal with 5G or any other technologies, it shouldn't be looked at in isolation. I think Professor Kamakoti also mentioned this, that we need to look at it as part of evolution of a slew of technologies. So I would say deep learning, social computing, blockchain, sensors, along with the 5G, which includes personal networks, content delivery networks, is what we should look at from a digital standpoint. Of course, we also need to find the right intersection with biology and materials also. And that's what's going to cause the disruption in the market space. One is efficient content storage and transmission. I'm now talking purely media and entertainment. Extended reality, immersive entertainment where you become part of the entertainment, you become a character in the movie that you're watching. Next generation oral engineering, sound when it is digitized doesn't have that live quality. Can you bring that back at the edge? Next generation visual rendering, vernacular content at the edge, transcribing, peer-to-peer gaming. I think AGK talked about some aspect of this. Creating virtual worlds at the edge, photorealistic avatars, personalized ad insertions at the edge, and so on and so forth in the media and entertainment space. Similarly, the future of learning, remote learning, collaborative learning, hence it brings in opportunities to look at student virtual engagement, faculty effectiveness in a whole new way, learning effectiveness in a whole new way, and so on. And wellness, again, one of my colleagues talked about it. I think from being focused on organs and tissues and bones on one end, and looking at subcellular, for example, genome and microbiome and connectome, there is something in between cellular health. So looking at cellular health at the edge is again something which is going to be made possible by this intersection of technologies, primarily AI, 5G, and so on. And finally, the digital future of mobility. There's a whole slew of opportunities which mobility brings, which is your ability to move from point A to point B. These are all going to be revolutionized, I believe, by 5G. But again, I'll emphasize, I agree that the technology is a continuum. It is the marketplace that will get disrupted.
Great. I think we all converge to one that it is in a way disruptive, but we need to find the right business case, which we have. We do have enablers. In the interest of time, we have. I would ask one probably last question to any one of you can answer that. That as Vinesh said that and AGK that there will be some regulatory challenges in terms of streamlining those new dimensions and as well as the spectrum. So do you think will over a period of time they can be streamlined, and if yes, what would be the right way to handle that? Dr. Magnus, I'm sure you'd have had this experience in US, in Europe. So are you able to give some light on that?
Sure. I mean, we're breaking new territory here, right, in terms of the applications. Let's say we have vehicles, we have machines which are remotely controlled and so forth. Under what conditions can they be moving around in the society, so to say? And there needs to be local regulations about it. My encouragement for any regulator in every nation is, of course, to make sure that they are embracive and enabling. It has to be okay in the local culture, but we also want it to be enabling in a good way so that it does happen. I think one thing also to keep in mind here is that we've so far, when we looked at introduction of new generations, it's been mainly for consumers. And if a nation is taking more time for the introduction, doesn't matter so much because all the consumers on the same street have the same performance. But what happens now as we go into enterprises is that enterprises in a nation that's early out have an early mover advantage, and that's a competitive advantage. So that's different for enterprises who are in a nation that is taking more time. So therefore, I'd say to regulators in any country where I go, the earlier you can bring clarity to the market in terms of spectrum regulation, in terms of other regulations, the better, because industries are moving now and they're moving in countries where it's possible. So that I think is worthwhile to consider.
Yep. I think absolutely right. And if I may just kind of make a helicopter pitch, it's really going to be a disruptive technology in a way. And also it will find lot many deployment cases, as Vinesh said, different dimension altogether, new stuff, which definitely will help. And with the right regulatory and right sort of enablers, certainly we see a clear growth and possibly a collaboration with a lot of entrepreneurs. That is what probably I could sum it up. One of the question which one of the audience has asked, which is very interesting one, could be the last one while I have summed it up, is that 5G needs varies of industry domain. How is the integration going to happen in terms of communication between to deploy this 5G solution seamlessly. We can see SDN playing a key role. So anyone of you want to take that up? I don't know whether AGK, you have any view on that?
I'm not that an expert from an SDN perspective, but I think the various industry domains coming together, I think I do agree, because the communication is one aspect of the entire solution, right? Whether you are doing an over-the-top content delivery solution, or the experience that we talked about, some sort of an immersive experience for AR, VR type of use case, or a drone flying, delivering certain content, in terms of boxes and things like that. There are a lot of those kind of delivery robots or delivery drones that are happening. For them to be able to communicate, there also it plays a very important thing. So you not only have to worry about the end application, but you also need to understand the turnaround times with respect to the local or cloud servers that you need to deal with, and the amount of data that you need to send back and forth. So you need to come across not only the application and the computing domain that it's in, but also understand the communication. So it's collectively a solution.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to say.
So Arvind, if I can add, I think the amount of value provided by a technology like 5G will force the industry and willingly to do all the things required to leverage and make good sense of it for the business. I think a country like India should plan a 5G rollout at a political regulatory level much better it did than 2G
Right.
and subsequent technologies. We should take lessons from there and try to make sure that we do not repeat the mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. I think that was great. Well said. That I think lessons what we have already learned, and we probably can take that up and make sure that all the entry barriers are taken care. But we have learnings from Europe on the regulatory side. We have the learnings of the ecosystem from your side. Probably the software-defined network was essentially to see how it can bring a flexibility in deployment and shorten the time to reach the market is probably what. So there are a lot of interest which is being generated to audience as I see that, and I'm sure it will go on and on.
Arvind, one thing from an SDN perspective, right? The value is that because it also allows interoperability with other networks. So
Exactly.
as new standards come about, it may be easy to deploy a solution. That's one way to look at it also.
Oh, absolutely. That was my kind of takeaway, which I would probably like to sum up. One, of course, is in a way it seems to be a disruptive technology. Second, I think important is to drive business cases, which is important to see. Third, of course, is to see how it will help India and what could be the India-specific coverage model. Fourth, definitely with the open standards and API and bringing those network-based services like latency sensitive, lot many services can be opened up. And finally, it helps to connect the entrepreneurs and open platform to make sure that there is a revenue proposition from enterprise, from various non-telco people to make sure that there is a business model. So all in all, I think this is a great takeaway, which probably the entrepreneurs will be able to take that up in as a time comes to it. But definitely it is written on the wall that 5G is going to be a great enabler, and the applications which we did not think about it are going to come. So great thinking, I think, great learning and great takeaway. I look forward from individually all of you to have a great contribution in this area as we move forward. And thank you very much for this great panel. With this, I would like to conclude my session. Thank you so much, guys, for having me as a moderator.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for the wonderful insights. Thank you.